and welcome to Macros with Mythili, our weekly program that takes a hard look at all the major macroeconomic developments in India and overseas. This week we're going to turn the spotlight on a potential game changer announced in the budget speech, the move to provide universal social security in India. The ramifications of the move go far beyond social security alone. The lack of a safety net is perhaps the biggest obstacle to meaningful labour reform, hence the importance of developing an effective safety net. But do the measures announced in the budget go far enough? Will they be able to assuage the fears of workers? To discuss all this and more, we have with us three of the best known experts in the field. Yogesh Agarwal, former Chairman PFRDA, Gautam Bhardwaj, MD, Invest India Micro Pensions, and A. Viswanathan, former Commissioner, Central Provident Fund Commissioner, EPFO. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Mr. Viswanathan, if I may start with you, since you've had long experience of running the EPF. The idea of the government as announced in the budget, at least as far as I understand it, is to model the Indian social security scheme, something on the lines of what the US social security scheme is. But there are two fundamental differences, particularly if you look at the Atal pension scheme. In the US, it's a compulsory deduction. It's funded entirely out of payroll taxes. And periodically from time to time, when the quantum in the Social Security Fund falls short of what the government wishes to pay, there's a transfer from the general tax pool to the Social Security Fund. Whereas the Indian system seems to leave it entirely to the worker to look after his own old age. So is that the way a country like India can go about providing old age security?
No. In fact, US is a compulsory one. Whereas, apart from all the factory workers or office workers, even the independent workers like taxi drivers or other laborers, they have to contribute to the Social Security Fund and they get a basic pension. Those who can afford more, they go under 401k. And the entire money, tax collected, that is Social Security tax, is not invested in where it goes into general spending of the government. The surplus after paying the pensions, whatever money is left out with the Social Security Administration, it is transferred to General Revenue of US and they get a IOU, a simple statement saying that yes, I borrowed $5 million or $10 billion from Social Security Fund, that's it. Whereas we are, the Atal pension is nowhere near the overall universalization of a pension. If entire country citizen of this country are going to get some sort of pension, then it is okay, but it's not going to be. It is going to be sort of those who can afford, they can come and pay. And there is a conditional cash transfer of 500 rupees. That is okay, it may enthuse, but the farmer schemes like Swalalamban, Jan Shri Bima Yojana have not been a great success. Not even it touched 1 percentage point of the target audience. If that is so, this universalization of Social Security in the current form as proposed in the budget will not touch even a minuscule of the problem.
Gautam, Mr. Viswanathan was saying that the scheme as announced in the budget will not touch even a minuscule proportion of the working population is what he says. Now you've been operating a micro pension fund. So from what you've gathered in the budget speech, is this really anywhere close to achieving universalization of pensions?
One can understand the compulsion of the government to launch a program like this, but very frankly, considering that we already had a very well-functioning, well-designed national pension scheme, I somehow find it difficult to reconcile with the need to now launch something like the Atal pension scheme. There are 2-3 obvious advantages that I can see. One, I can see that with guarantees, perhaps people will, at least low-income people who might not understand market-linked returns, might be able to more easily accept a scheme which seems to have guarantees. But I think there is also a flip side because the guarantees are only in nominal terms. We've done some calculations and I find that if I'm 18 years old today and I'm saving, say, the 210 rupees that is required to get a 5,000 rupee pension, assuming even a 5% inflation, I'll get roughly 600 rupees in real terms after 42 years of saving. So I'm not terribly sure whether the usefulness of the scheme for the kind of target audience that we're looking at will be real. So at one level, however, it will get some people into the program. At a second level, I find that it might improve persistency. One of the good things I find in the scheme is that it says that it will only look at people with bank accounts. So if you have bank accounts and there's an auto debit facility, then people who have unpredictable incomes will still be able to make more regular and predictable contributions through an auto debit facility on their bank accounts. The flip side, of course, is that very few of the people that we are targeting with the Atal Pension Scheme will actually A, have bank accounts, and B, use banking. And if they don't have money in their bank accounts, then you won't really get any.
No, apart from which, if you see the scheme, it says like the age of joining 20, you have to contribute 100 rupees a month for 40 years. Now, most of the workers in India, they are not in the part of the formal sector. In the informal sector, you may not have 100 rupees to give every month. You may have in 1 month, you may not have in another month. And at the same time, as you very rightly said, in real terms, the amount that you receive, this 100 rupees per month, after 40 years, you get 2,000 rupees per month. Today, it sounds very attractive, but if you discount it at today's rate of interest, actually the benefit is just barely 92 rupees in today's terms. So are we really misleading people? Does this really achieve universalization of pension at all? How does a micro pension scheme, how is that any better?
Well, so through micro pension, we actually deliver the NPS Lite, for instance. And the NPS Lite is a far superior scheme. There is still a government subsidy, but the subsidy is explicit and it's upfront. There's 1,000 rupees that I get from the government of India, provided I save 1,000 rupees.
And that is indefinite, not like this only for first 5 years?
Well, in the case of the government of India, it was till 2017. But my sense is it's not very difficult to extend this. The good thing is that many state governments have stepped forward and are now offering an additional co-contribution over and above the GOI. So, for instance, Karnataka is offering 1,200 rupees over and above the 1,000 rupees for people who are domicile of Karnataka. Similarly, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and so on and so forth. So, my sense is a scheme like this, which is the NPS Lite, is a program that I think the government should have put much more shoulder into. It's much more explicit at the level of liabilities. It's much more explicit at the level of the kinds of, outcomes. Because if you look at it, we are currently looking at 7.5%, roughly. My calculation is about 7.5% is the guaranteed return under the Atal Pension Scheme. I look at the NPS Lite has returned 11, 12, 13% over the last 5 years. Even if I take 10%, which is 2.5% more, the pension value of a person joining today at age 18 actually goes up 3 times in a program where there is just a couple of percent or maybe 3% additional returns.
Then you question, despite all this, like he's talking about the NPS Lite, which he says is far more attractive, then why is it that the NPS has got such little salience with the public at large? Apart from government employees who had no option, the offtake has not been as good as one would have anticipated.
Good question, Mythili. Largely, I think one issue has to be sorted out by the government. This is the most sophisticated and modern product that we have come up with. And the world over, wherever I have travelled, they have said that the NPS is one of the most beautifully designed schemes. But
it's notoriously badly marketed, I must tell you that.
Yeah. But the problem comes with the marketing of the scheme. The problem is that with the taxation of the scheme, the government of India, in its own wisdom, has decided to this is the only product, so pension product or the social security product, which is taxed at maturity. All other competing products, including EPF, including Public Provident Fund, everything is EEE. And this is the only product which is EET. So when I know that whatever I am going to save for my pension, 1/3 of it is going to take away at my retirement age, and when I need it the most, the people are not willing to come forward. And this is when we have talked to the corporates, everybody said it's a beautiful product. You get the tax treatment on par with other products, and we will just flock in. And we have been raising this with the government, and they have been promising us a level playing field. But the issue is that till you make it EEE or you make the other products also EET. But if you're going to tax the NPS when a person retires at 60 and take away most of these people will be in the 30% tax bracket. Maybe till 1 month before retirement he'll be not in the taxable bracket. But on retirement, the corpus will run into lakhs, and that will be taxable at 30%. That is the problem which is coming up with the NPS.
Well, I'm afraid, Yogesh, I'll have to interrupt you at that point because we have to slip into a very short break. But please do stay with us. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. You're watching Macros with Mythili, and we're discussing the social security schemes announced by the government in the budget. Mr. Viswanathan, just before the break, Yogesh was talking about the many advantages of NPS. At the same time, you've seen labour unions and the trustees of the EPFO repeatedly arguing about the advantages of EPF. Now, is there something to be said for a scheme which gives you an assured return at our kind of level of income, where we're talking about the average worker, for whom the assurance of a return is very important, and it is safety that comes first, not so much return? Do you think this choice of EPF or NPS is a little premature?
Comparing EPF and NPS is not done at all, because you can't compare apple and a brinjal, because both are fundamentally different. NPS is related to return. It's you have to see it through investment prism only, whereas EPF, as well as for that matter even ESIC, both we have to take it together. They are all social security schemes. They are based on the solidarity principle. And this means this generation of workers contribute for the previous generation, and the next generation will contribute for this generation's income as well as health security and old age, survivor benefit, etc. Now, what EPF, apart from the return part, offers is safety, yes. Even if an employer has not paid the contribution, NPS has no means of ensuring, mandating and securing the compliance, whereas EPF has a compliance mechanism. And not only that, EPF also guarantees that if an employer has not paid, the money would be paid to the worker. Yes, benefits would not be reduced in any case. So, taking the totality, EPF attracts more and gives you more value for money, even though it invests very okay, the mindset has not changed with regard to investment.
Apart from which, EPF, as I understand right, offers you not only provident fund and so old age security, but it also gives you insurance, and there's an element of the hospitals also, the ASI hospitals. So all these three factors put together, would that put EPF at a distinct advantage over NPS? Because we're not talking about the employees who are well off, we're talking about employees who are just barely above subsistence level. So for them, does this triple package make the EPF far superior to NPS?
ESI doesn't come under EPF. What I is independent. What I took it as a whole, social security basket as a whole. That's why I mentioned ESI. But as far as the EPF is concerned, along with the EPS and EDLI insurance taken together, it offers far superior benefits compared to NPS.
Mr. Agarwal, would you agree that since EPF offers a number of advantages apart from the safety, and as Mr. Viswanathan mentioned, there's an element of compulsion about it, so the employer cannot get away, whereas in the NPS, apart from government, where the government also contributes, in every other case it is not necessary for the employer to contribute?
Mythili, it was mentioned just a little while back that EPF and NPS are not comparable. I think they are. You can compare them to one being a Maruti 800, the other being a Mercedes 320. You see, the issue is that...
So, for ordinary workers in India, do you want to ensure that everyone has a Maruti, or are we trying to get them a Mercedes?
I'm trying to ensure that when he retires, he gets the maximum bang out of his buck. That is the basic issue. You see, EPF, I would like to remind my esteemed colleague on this show, EPF has a huge funding gap. The intentions may be good, but the issue is, if you really talk in terms of reality, EPF has created, because of these issues, trying to ensure a defined benefit. The world over, without exception, countries have moved from defined benefit schemes to defined contribution schemes, and that exactly is what NPS is. It is the first scheme in the country and the only scheme in the country today which is not based on defined benefit but on defined contribution. That is the one fundamental principle. That is why defined benefit schemes all over the world have been abandoned, because no government in the world, including the US government, could come up with a solution to the problem that from where are the funds going to come. It may be that from the point of view of the laborer, it is very good to promise him that I'll give you this % of return guaranteed. But ultimately, at some stage, maybe 5 years, maybe 50 years from now, you're going to land in a soup, because you will not be able to uphold the promises that you will make to the laborer. From where the funds going to come? That is why NPS scheme is definitely I think there is no other option for the country but to go for an NPS, where the person gets his money, he gets a say in how the money is going to be invested.
But as things stand today, Mr. Yogesh, I must correct you on this. The NPS, the service is really appalling. I agree, EPFs is not very much better, but NPS, it's touted to be very technology savvy, very customer friendly. But in actual practice, because you have to go through a POP,
You are right.
who really gives you very little service
I
at
would
all.
agree with
There's
you
nothing much
100%.
to choose, frankly, in service. I'm
But
talking about service.
I would agree with you 100% on the service aspect, but the solution is not to change these basic schemes. The features are beautiful. The problem with, as you said, in the service is the issue that you should give up the mindset that you will leave nothing on the table for anybody. The intermediaries have to be given a decent amount of remuneration and sort of to enable them to perform. Today, as you would recall, we started off NPS with a ridiculous scheme of 0.0009%. This is what you give to the fund manager. Now, the fund managers told me that for every additional account they get in service, their losses increase. So the point is, give them a decent remuneration to the fund managers, and then you will see the service automatically improve. Improve the distribution outlets, increase the market, then you will see the marketing and coverage also increase. But we are talking right now of the basic features of the scheme, and definitely NPS is Mercedes 320, and if you say that a labourer doesn't deserve a Mercedes 320, I will not agree with you. A labourer deserves the Mercedes 320 as much as Mukesh Ambani does. The question is, you're talking
Yogesh,
of,
I have no quarrel with you on that. Everybody perhaps in this country does deserve a Mercedes 320. Question is, are we at the state of development where we can really even promise him, even to dream of a Mercedes 320? But afraid on that note, we have to slip into a very short break, but we'll be back with you very soon. Welcome back. You're watching Macros with Mythili, and we're discussing the social security schemes announced in the budget. Gautam, before the break, Yogesh was holding out the promise of a Mercedes for every worker in India. Now, that would be a wonderful dream. I myself don't have a Mercedes, right? So what would you like to aspire for? For a Maruti 800? Of course, it's no longer produced perhaps, but or a Mercedes.
Again, I think the safety or guarantee, these kind of terminologies, I would agree with Mr. Agarwal, I think are very dangerous, frankly. If you look at the defined benefit cost of civil service pensions, in about 8 years ago, we had done an estimate of the liability. The implicit liability of just civil service pensions was 22 lakh crores. EPFO, I think the EPS had within 10 years of its launch, had a liability of 50,000 crores. So I'm not terribly sure, and here I agree completely with Mr. Agarwal, whether we are in a position to offer guaranteed outcomes, and whether schemes like the EPF or the EPS are the kinds of schemes that should be broad-based. I think the budget has done a wonderful job in saying, let us open the door and let us give a choice to a person who is now covered by EPFO. He has an option to continue with EPFO, and he has an option equally of joining a scheme where civil servants are also participating in that scheme. Doctors and chartered accountants and lawyers
Except that the government does not, there the government contributes. For the civil servant, the government also contributes. Yes. Whereas for the non-government servant, there is no contribution from the employer.
Right. But
so he has to fund it entirely himself.
No, but in the EPF
he gets tax benefits. Remember 80CCD2, whatever the employer is contributing, he gets exclusive benefits up to 10% of the salary.
But surprisingly, most employers don't seem interested. Why is that?
Because of taxation issues, no. See, the point, as I said to you earlier in the discussion, the corporates say, beautiful scheme, I would like to invest tomorrow because it saves me tax. You see, they contribute.
Then why don't they join?
In the case of non-government employees, the contribution by government of India is not a direct contribution, but a contribution through the exchequer through tax breaks. Now, but once you say that I'm going to tax you, the entire corpus I'm going to tax when you retire. When I retire, I need money like hell. I need a house, and at that point of time, you tell me that you want to take away 1/3 of my savings.
So people are not interested. And hence corporates are not.
Only one issue, taxation. Otherwise, nothing. You will find that even for a blue collar worker, at the time he retires, the amount of corpus in his NPS would be in lakhs, and then that will be added on to your income straight. So as I said, 1 month before his retirement, he may be a tax-free employee. But on retirement, when he gets the NPS back, he will run into the 30% tax bracket, because what is 30%? 10 lakhs. 30% tax bracket, if I'm not mistaken, is about 10 lakhs. Are you going to tell me that if a blue collar worker, let us say he joins at the age of 20 and he retires for 40 years, whatever amount he has saved, and plus the returns, it's going to be definitely more than 10 lakh of rupees.
We'll ask Mr. Viswanathan that. Mr. Viswanathan, the average blue-collared worker in India, would he have a corpus of about 10 lakhs? Will he come into the 30% tax bracket? after contributing for 40 years? That is my first question. My second question is that for this blue-collared worker, if you were to give him the option of EPF or NPS, does the family, because the average blue-collared worker, is he likely to exercise his option and join, or will he opt out altogether from a social security scheme, in which case it is his family who suffers on retirement?
Normally, the money could have grown to a sizable, not 20, 30 lakhs, but really about reasonable for an ordinary blue collar, say a Udupi hotel worker, a BD roller, or a small time factory worker. The money corpus would grow up to 20 lakhs if he has not withdrawn his contributions on the way for marriage of his son, or purchase of building of a house, or purchase of a flat, or something like that. In Indian situation, in Indian cultural situation, we have got to spend money on daughter's marriage and son's marriage and buying a house. So he used to dilute the provident fund accumulation. So it doesn't accumulate that much. In EPF, generally they outgo at the time of retirement for an ordinary worker, not the high paid workers. It will be about 10 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 5 lakhs, like that. So it doesn't accumulate 30 lakhs. As far as the normal worker is concerned, I think he should prefer to stay with EPF for one simple reason, that the management will be compelled to pay, and there is an audit and compliance takes place, and money is guaranteed. And pension is, whatever be the allurement of other investment, pension has a great value in this country. Gautam would know, even ordinary vegetable vendors or cobblers and rickshaw pullers, they value pension, and a factory worker will also value pension, and if it is guaranteed by government, what will be the guarantee? I think they will go in for that.
Okay, so as far as Mr. Viswanathan is concerned, he's very clear that the ordinary blue-collared worker, because we are talking especially from the point of view of labour reform, we're looking at it from the blue-collared worker's perspective. He would prefer EPF to NPS. Now, Yogesh, if you are not the chairman PFRDA.
He didn't say that. Mr. Viswanathan said that Mr. Viswanathan would prefer the blue-collar worker.
No, he was putting himself
in the blue-collar worker. You see, firstly, on the taxation issue you asked him, he agreed that at the time even a blue-collar worker would have a corpus of more than 10 lakhs, Mythili, and that will be straight added to his income for that particular year. It will be taxed at 1/3. Let's finish on 1/3. Secondly, EPF allows withdrawals. NPS doesn't. Now, I believe that 20% withdrawals have been permitted of late, but even then, unlike EPF, where what happens is that whatever you have saved, you are allowed to withdraw for daughter's marriage or children's education, but in NPS, you are allowed to withdraw only up to 20%.
So, you wouldn't look at it as a desirable flexibility in the scheme, that you are allowed to withdraw for emergencies?
The whole idea is that because we took a lesson out of the EPFO box, EPFO, we realized that everybody withdraws. You see, there is a saying in English, Mythili, sometimes you have to save a person from himself. Left to him, everybody would like to withdraw money for it because the pressure is so great. So you have to prevent him from withdrawing if you want to give him a pension. And that is why in NPS, there was no withdrawals permitted till maturity. Now I believe that 20% is withdrawal. But even after the 20% withdrawal, he will still have a corpus of more than 10 lakhs.
But you're still giving him the option. Let me just give Gautam the last word. Gautam, what would you do if you were a blue-collared worker and not Gautam Bhardwaj, head of the Oasis Fund, etc., etc.? What would you do? Would you opt for NPS or would you opt for EPF?
If I'm already covered by the EPFO, I think what I would do is I would take a leaf out of what the FM has announced. I would allow my employers' contributions to continue to flow to EPS and some to flow to EPFO. The balance 12%, I think I would just simply go with the NPS. The NPS has a very good feature. It's got a scheme called the default option, which automatically rebalances your portfolio over time. I think this gives you a good bang for the buck. Even if I'm a blue-collared worker, even if I'm not very financially literate, which by the way has got nothing to do with the color of your collar. Even if you're not very financially literate, I think you should run with the NPS, go with the default option, and let your employer continue to invest the 12% with EPF.
So the Atal program does not offer you very much benefits, particularly because we had the Swavlamban scheme earlier. How is this better?
No, Atal pension scheme is actually not looking at the EPFO audience at all. This is looking at 350 million people who don't have a pension, neither in the government nor under the EPFO. So these are the vegetable vendors.
But NPS is there, so why not NPS?
So this is exactly my first point.
So why have an Atal? Okay.
I don't really see the need to have, frankly, with these the numbers that I have seen, that you can get 1,000 to 5,000 and you sort of are tending to assume that if we've got 350 million people who look exactly the same. We've got doctors, we've got chartered accountants, lawyers, and you've also got rickshawalas and, you know. So I think the heterogeneity is not really being addressed adequately in this scheme.
Okay. So clearly, I think at the end of this discussion, we have three very disparate views. I think Gautam and Yogesh tend to be on one side, Mr. Viswanathan, and I think I tend to agree with him also, that in India, some degree of assurance is important in a country where income levels are so low, when workers not very often know what is best for them. As Yogesh said, sometimes you have to protect the worker from himself, and so the EPFO looks at it in terms of compulsion in terms of contribution, NPS says limits in terms of withdrawal. Either way, as far as government is concerned, I think the measures announced in the budget really don't go far enough to assure, to address the entire issue of old age security, social security. Much more needs to be done. With that, I've come to the end of this program. Thank you so much, Gautam, Yogesh, as also Mr. Viswanathan. Thank you also for watching, but we'll be back next week with yet another edition of Macros with Mythili. Till then, it's thank you and goodbye from all of us at ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/etnow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at etnowlive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/etnow.